Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
It's already put in.
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
I'm just here so I won't get fined.
Breeze hits it in the air to center. We will see you tomorrow night.
It's crunch time.
Welcome to another Monday. Welcome to another episode of Crunch Time with Joe, Scott, and Wags. I'm Joe, along with Scott. Scott, how you doing?
I'm good, Joe. How are you, man?
Going good, man. How about you, Wags?
Oh, I'm wonderful. I'm excited because we've got a lot of great stuff to talk about today. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see what happens. We got some announcements to make, and we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. I think it's going to be a hell of a show to get us closer to the end of July.
It should be a happy, upbeat show today. There's nothing really bad to talk about in sports, is there?
Let's see. That no. No, I think we're all good.
Oh,
Yeah. I think we're doing wonderful.
no doom and gloom from Joe today.
Hold on. Let's not promise anything.
Let's not promise anything
because
because later in the show I'm going to talk about somebody who should be in baseball's Hall of Fame. I'll talk about that later.
And speaking of which, let's just hit the starting lineup right now. Let's just run down the list of what we're going to be talking about today. First up, we're going to be talking some Cardinal baseball, which I know, like we said, is not all doom and gloom all of a sudden post All-Star break. We're going to be talking about that today. We're also going to be hitting some Blues talk. I know it's the off season, but a lot of stuff is going on. Some signings, some where in the world is the Stanley Cup trivia, that sort of stuff. We'll also talk about the British Open today. I know golf isn't a huge thing on our show, but that was a pretty cool, pretty good tournament. Surprising winner. Really, really cool for him. We'll talk about, like Joe said, the Hall of Fame induction. We'll talk about who was inducted. See if any of us have some memories, because a lot of these guys are current guys that we kind of know and kind of grew up watching. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And like Joe said, we'll talk about who's coming next for the Hall of Fame, plus who we think should be in the Hall of Fame that may not be getting in. And we'll also talk some SEC football, college football, a little bit of NFL talk as well. So we got a packed show today. It's going to be awesome. And like I said, we're also going to have some announcements coming along. And you know what? Since it's not kind of on our list of things to talk about today, let's just get it out there right now and talk about what's going to be happening next week. Scott has done us a huge thing, and I'll let him talk about it real quick.
Yeah, next Monday we're going to have a guest, and not just a call-in guest. We're going to have an in-studio guest.
I know Joe didn't know about this, so this is news to him.
See what happens when you walk in late.
Go ahead.
KMOX Sports Director Tom Ackerman will be in studio with us next Monday morning to talk a little trade deadline. Hopefully we'll have some Cardinal news by then. Maybe
That will be interesting. We'll also while he's here, let's talk about what's going on too. I mean, there's a lot happening. A lot of teams are going to be moving and shaking. What are the Giants going to do? I mean, this team looks like they may not sell Madison Bumgarner all of a sudden.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely be talking about that with Tom next week and talk about what the Cardinals are doing, where they're at. I mean, we're getting ready to talk about them. We'll talk about their fight for first place, which is really, really crazy. And it's going to be really cool just to have a guest in studio, because we've had a lot of call-in guests, and people may think, oh, well, maybe it's someone just doing a voice. We're actually going to have a live in-person guest in this studio, and it's going to get a little crowded because 4 people in here. We're going to have to find a way to make it work, but we will, and we're pretty excited for that. And Scott did amazing job getting him in here the first time on the phone, and now we got him coming in, and we've had guys like Randy Carricker and Scott Warman, and who knows who else is coming down the pipeline.
We're moving up in the world.
Holy cow! So, well, let's go ahead and do it. Let's jump on into to leading off.
I'm ready. You are?
I'm ready for it as well. It's Cardinal baseball. So, Joe, just start. You got. I know you're ready for it. I know you're ready for it. So, take it away. We won 3 or 4 against Cincinnati. I know you want to talk about that. So start off with the series against the Reds.
Okay, so the St. Louis Cardinals took 3 or 4 against the Cincinnati Reds, and I want to prelude this into saying the Cardinals are only hitting .233 after the All-Star break, but their record is pretty good after the All-Star break. I think it has to do with pitching. Pitching's been better. Starting pitching's been better. Even when you didn't have good starting pitching for Adam Wainwright, you got the win. And the Cardinals showed a lot of reserve fighting back like they did. They were down 7-0, scored 10 unanswered runs. When's the last time, guys, that we saw?
They ended up becoming answered runs because the Reds scored.
Well, yeah, but at the
later
time, they were unanswered runs.
Well, of course they were unanswered.
My
They're the only
point
team
is,
batting.
When's the last time you saw, if ever, that any of you saw the Cardinals score 10 unanswered runs?
I don't know if it was 10, but I remember in Cincinnati they came back in the top of the ninth inning with a pretty decent comeback as well.
Yeah, they showed the highlights of that. They did it against the Cubs, I think, in 2012, something like that.
Is that the game that Albert hit 3 home runs against the Cubs too, or was that a different game?
No, that was a different one. That was in Chicago. That was like 2002 or 3, I think.
Yeah, he ended up hitting 3 home runs against the Cubs. That was a great game because I turned it off when it was like 6 or 7-0 in Chicago. I was like, we lost this game. Turn it on later, and they'd won.
Yeah, I wonder how many people turned that game off Saturday night when it was 7-0, and then all of a sudden flipped it back to see how bad the score was, and we're like, holy crap, what just happened?
Well, I was calling Metro Collegiate baseball a couple games on Friday night, and in between innings, I looked down at my phone and I saw it was 7-2 Reds in the 6th. And I'm like, all right, here we go again. Another one of those Cardinals games that they should have beat the team and they're sucking it up. And then at the end of the next half inning, I opened my phone up again and I saw it was 10-7. I'm like, what the hell just happened?
And I want to bring up something. Joe, do you remember the conversation we had last week and you asked me if I could really consider Paul DeJong a guy that could lead this offense?
Yeah.
And I told you, yes, he absolutely could. You know, he had 2 home runs and 7 RBIs in those 2 games.
Well, I will say, Paul DeJong's a guy where when he's struggling, he's bad. Okay. I mean, it's not a medium with him. He's either really good or really bad. And I don't know. Paul DeJong's always been a high strikeout guy.
Yeah, although he's not striking out a ton this year. He has been cold, but he's a guy that can get hot, and he could carry you for 2 or 3 weeks now. I mean, that's kind of his history.
Kind of an all-star for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we had to have one person representative of the team, but
he deserved it.
He did. He really did. So looking at the series against Cincinnati on Thursday night, they won 7-4. Tommy Edman, grand slam. I can't believe that wasn't the first thing that came out of your mouth, Joe. Like, you're like a huge Tommy Edman fan.
Yeah.
And the first thing out of your mouth wasn't that he hit a grand slam to win a game on Thursday night?
He's come up big when the Cardinals needed him. He's only batting himself like 226 after the All-Star break, which is astonishing.
Yeah, but he was like 7 for 17 in the series against Cincinnati.
That's my point. The thing is, the guy, how is he hitting 226 when the guy always seems to come up big?
Well, because he had a couple of 0 for 5 games here and a couple of 1 for 5 games there. I mean, it was one of those things. Yeah, if you have he does have the ability to have the big time hit, but he hadn't been able to string the big time hit with other hits in games. It would be one of those things where he'd come up and he would be 0 for 4, and then all of a sudden he'd hit a home run or something. You'd be like, yeah, he did great. He won the game, blah, blah, blah. But then you're like, wait, he was 0 for 4 going into that at bat.
Right.
So this series against Cincinnati, he really started to kind of put some things together.
It's not how you start, it's how you finish, Wags.
Well, yes, but if you were consistently going 0 for 4 and then maybe lucking into a hit here every once in a while, that's not going to be something that you can continue to go on throughout. Right. You have to be able to start stringing stuff together. And he showed in this series against Cincinnati that he can start stringing stuff together. It begs the question of what happens when Carpenter comes back.
It's going to be a while because they're hoping maybe they can send him out on a rehab. He wants to go to the minors and work things out. So I think it's going to be another 2 or 3 weeks before you see Matt Carpenter.
Well, and if that's the case, if Edman continues to produce like he did against Cincinnati, does that make it tougher for them to take him out of the lineup and put Carpenter back in?
It should, but will it be? I don't think so. I think when they think Matt Carpenter's ready, he's coming back, whether fans or anybody else thinks that they need him in the lineup or not.
That's a tough one. I mean, and with the trade deadline coming up, who knows what's going to be happening there. And, we may have a position open up that Carpenter could fill that keeps Edman into the lineup as well.
Well, and that's the one thing. At least Tommy Edman can play a bunch of positions. So he can play second, he can play short. And they say he can even play some outfield. So you may see him, because, our right fielder is pretty bad. So
yes, he is. Yeah.
I mean, to the point that Jim Edmonds was talking about it about every inning this series in Cincinnati. I mean, there were so many balls that fell in front of him that he didn't even get close to that should have been outs.
They made a point, and McLaughlin made a good point. Edmonds kept bringing up outfield depth. And where Martinez was positioned at one point, a ball over his head's a home run.
Yeah, the thing, and Edmonds kind of said this after he made that point. He's playing too deep, but he doesn't go back on the ball well either. And so I guess he's more comfortable playing that deep. But again, there were fly balls dropping all over the place in right and center field when Dexter Fowler was out there that neither one of them could get anywhere close to that should have been outs.
So it was essentially them deciding that they were willing to give up singles rather than risk doubles and triples.
Basically.
And that's what it kind of boiled down to is you're going to trade a couple of outs here for a couple of singles there to prevent doubles and triples.
And Martinez, and I bag on Jose Martinez a lot. He had a big home run in that game that they came back. He hit a big 3-run homer.
He certainly did.
The guy's defense is just brutal. I mean, there were 2 or 3 times he threw the ball to the wrong base. There was one time that he tried to pick the ball up like 4 times before he actually picked it up. And then when he did throw it, he launched it over everybody's head. He's a bad outfielder, and it's hurting you.
And it's one of those things that you have to really probably peg him as a bench player. He needs to be a pinch hitter, and that's it. Not even a guy that comes in to pinch hit and then stays in the game. It's one of those things that he's for the Cardinals, he probably needs to be that bat off the bench. And if he can continue to produce off the bench and stay and get in, and collect hits when he is that pinch hitter, then he's got a role on the team.
Right.
But if he's one of those guys that cannot come off the bench as a pinch hitter and is cold and doesn't get hits, then at that point, you got nothing for him.
Right.
This guy's hitting 270. I think it was like 275 last time I looked. And that's, to be honest with you, I think that's a soft 275.
Well, but that's still one of the best batting averages on the Cardinals, though. That's the thing, though.
Yeah. And before he hit that home run, he was 0 for 17 before he hit that home run the other night. He's definitely not hitting like he did last year. And it's another case where it's a bad contract. Mo gave him a 2-year extension. And why? I mean,
he had no reason to. There was no need for it.
And I know everybody likes him. He's a good guy. He's fun in the clubhouse. And he's come through with some big hits. But he needs to be in the American League where he's a designated hitter. I mean, if there was a prototypical designated hitter, it's Jose Martinez.
Oh, yeah. What is the and we're going to kind of jump ahead to the trade, just a roundabout question since we're on Martinez. What does the designated hitter situation look like in Toronto right now? Is it Vlad Guerrero Jr.?
No, he's playing third base.
Is he playing third base? So, I mean, with the fact that, Toronto's got scouts down at Memphis and watching because there's a potential Marcus Stroman trade that's potentially out there as well. Is that a case where maybe you're able to throw Jose Martinez into that deal, even if it's just one of those, hey, we'll throw this guy in, we'll pay his contract just to get him off the team?
It's possible. And the Cardinals in Toronto have made a lot of trades the last couple of years. Yeah. Rando Grichuk, Aledmus Diaz. Even goes back to Scott Rowland and David Eckstein. So that's a trade partner, and it seems like the Cardinals trade with the same people over and over and over again. So maybe the Stroman thing is a possibility. Martinez would be a good fit there. I mean, that's a hitter's ballpark. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just a thought. You never know. But jumping back to the series, we talked about the 12-11 win on Friday. I mean, the Cardinals were trailing 7-0, scored 10 runs in the 6th, but then they had to hang on to win. Gave up a 2-run homer to Laverne, and then ended up having the bases loaded in the 9th inning and 2 runs coming in to score against Carlos Martinez. It's one of those things that you sit there and go, is Carlos the guy that they really want down there at the end? I mean, I know with Jordan Hicks gone for the season, you've got limited amount of choices, but Martinez has been good at moments and he's been really bad at moments. Is he the option going forward? Because there's also trade rumors going around with Martinez as well.
I don't see Martinez going anywhere. And that game, he was out of gas. He'd pitched 4 out of 5 days, and he was exhausted. But everybody in that bullpen had to pitch a lot, and so that was just a case of you had to leave him out there, and he fought through it and got it. I mean, you could tell just by looking at him out there, he wasn't the normal Carlos Martinez. There wasn't that – he didn't have that moxie going out to the mound. He looked worn out from the time he got out there.
Well, and he ended up coming in on Sunday and nailing down the save as well. So, but Saturday they fell 3-2. Really, the key from that game for me was just the failure to drive a runner on third, less than 2 outs. I mean, it's kind of been one of those things that has killed this team this year. I mean, they've played in a ton of 1-run games, and having the ability to not get a runner home from third base with less than 2 outs. As you get further and further into the season, that's going to be what probably prevents you from getting into the playoffs.
Well, and the big thing about that game, not only did you strand runners on third a couple of times, Paul Goldschmidt came to the plate 4 times in that game with runners in scoring position and didn't drive home a run. And, that's the big – just when you think he's starting to turn a corner, he has a horrible series in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And he looked defeated at the plate. I mean, he didn't look like he had a chance anytime he came up in that series.
It was amazing to watch because Goldschmidt, we thought was getting hot before the All-Star break and came out, looked like he was, in demand again, had a home run after the All-Star break. And then he just, for whatever reason, just went into a shell, a cold spell that, he hasn't really been able to get out of a cold spell, at least for an extended period.
Well, he had 13 RBIs in 10 games going into the Cincinnati series. He had the big 3-run homer that won the game against Pittsburgh on Wednesday afternoon at Busch. And then, he goes into that first game in Cincinnati and strikes out 4 times. And like I said, didn't look like he had a chance.
Yeah, and then he had 3, I think it was 2 or 3 hit game the next day and then struck out another 2 times the day after.
Well, yeah, Saturday
so
the game
it's
we're
like,
talking about where he stranded all the runners on base.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's there's the consistency, at least in this series, isn't there? So, I mean, maybe it's one of those things that in Cincinnati, he wasn't comfortable. Maybe,
Right.
I haven't looked at his numbers that he has against Cincinnati in Cincinnati, but could be the ballpark.
It's possible.
I mean, it's very possible that the ballpark gives him fits, and for a guy that can hit the home run on a home run hitter's ballpark, to not have one is a little disheartening. And but we'll see. We're in Pittsburgh tonight, so we'll see if that's turned it around. He had the day off yesterday. That one was a 3-1 win yesterday. Jairo Munoz had a big day.
He did.
Very big day. Jack Flaherty, he struggled, but he pushed through. In a sense,
he was angry to come out of that game with 4 in the third. I know he would have had 2 more outs for a potential win, but you know what? I agree with Mike Schilt there because you're looking for wins. Players don't come first in that situation. You have to play for the win, especially when you already secured a series split, right?
At that point, you at that point,
you
need the series
wins.
wins.
Exactly. So what would you do in that situation? Would you have done the same thing? I'm going to ask both of you.
I'm not a major league manager.
No, but if you were watching the game, you've watched a lot of games, Wags.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have made the same decision. Like you said, you were only up 2-0 at the time, bases loaded, no outs. You had a guy coming in like the Gallegos, and he's pitched very well this year. It was still one of those things. I thought you were probably going to give up at least a run, if not 2, even if Gallegos came in and pitched well. But they were able to kind of pitch around it, and they got lucky in a sense. But like I said, Gallegos has been pitching very, very well this year, and he came in and he got the job done. So yeah, I probably would have done the same thing. And you're right. You're going for wins right now. You need to win games. You need to win series. And I think that was the first time this year that I've really seen Schilt do that.
I would have definitely done it because at this point I have serious questions about Jack Flaherty's mental toughness.
I agree. I mean, it's one thing to have a mentally tough guy and Bob Gibson talking to you. It's another thing to have that. You know what I mean? Have that.
It's a second year.
Yeah, it's a second
year. If he
year.
learns from it, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe. But what really bugs me about him is the interviews that I've heard lately. They ask him a question. Oh, I'm not worried about it. It's baseball. Things change. You can't really worry. It's one game. Whatever. I don't. And that's not the attitude you want to hear from. Can you imagine Chris Carpenter saying, "Oh, I'm not worried about it. I didn't have a good game. It's just one game." I mean, that's not the attitude you want to have from a guy that you're saying is going to be your ace and the bulldog with your pitching staff. And, Edmonds and McLaughlin both were on him in that first inning. Because if you watched him in that first inning, there was no real effort out there, he had no flow. He looked like he didn't even want to be out there in that first inning yesterday. It was like he was hot and he didn't care.
Yep. Now I'm just wondering, is any of that come down from management or from above about, his mindset about, hey, it's just one game. I'll get over it and move past it. I mean, yes, he's the one doing the interviews, but a lot of times some of these guys are coached through things where this is what you're going to say. And he's young. So he's maybe, if that's the case, is he being like, look, I'm just going to go with what they're saying and we'll go from there. I mean, I don't know.
I don't think you tell somebody. I don't think you tell a player to say, "Hey, I'm not worried about it." And that's not what you want to send to your fan base. That the players don't really care. That whatever. And that's kind of how the last few interviews I've seen with him have been. And so that makes me wonder, how dedicated is he truly to the game? And so we'll see. Like you said, he's only in his second year, and he was so good last year. But you've got to be able to get through more than 5 innings. Again,
Oh yeah.
Again, and Edmonds made this point, and a bunch of people have made it. He's chasing strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
He's not pitching to contact. If he doesn't strike somebody out, he walks them. You can't have inning after inning after inning where you're throwing 30 pitches. He hasn't won a game in 2 months.
Is that so? Is talking with Bob Gibson a hindrance or a help?
Well, I mean, you can't talk to a Hall of Famer like that and it not be a help. I mean, if it's not helping you, if he's not giving you advice that you're using to work through stuff, there's something wrong with you.
Exactly. I mean, look, you talk to one of the greatest pitchers in the era of the 60s. I mean, they changed and 70s and 70s. Okay, I'm on a roll here. Sorry, but they changed rules because of him.
Yep.
So why not take that guy's advice? I'm not saying he's not, but why not take that guy's advice and run with it?
Well, maybe Bob just needs to get another face-to-face meeting with him and be like, look, straighten up and you'll be successful. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how often they talk during the season. I don't know how much he solicits any advice outside of the team right now during the season. But like you said, if there's no care in it, then what exactly are you going to get from him the rest of the season? Right. And that's a scary thing.
Well, and not only does he have Gibson talking to him, he's also got Chris Carpenter in his ear, which
that's a pretty good one too.
Yeah, which arguably are the two most intense pitchers in Cardinal history. And while we're talking about him, thoughts and prayers to Bob Gibson as he battles with cancer right now, and we hope he pulls through. If anybody's tough enough to do it, it is Gibby.
Well, and Lou Brock got through his, and now Gibby will give it the fight. And tell you what, cancer better be scared as shit. I mean, come on. You don't want Bob Gibson coming down after you, and cancer picked the wrong guy to mess with.
So you got Pittsburgh this week. Now that we're kind of off the series, we're moving on from that.
Actually, I just want to talk a little bit about the series wins we've had. I mean, they've won all 3 series since the All-Star break.
Pittsburgh, right? I'm just trying
Arizona,
Pittsburgh,
and Cincinnati. And they haven't lost a series in July. Right. I know that's only 4 series, and the first one was a split, but they've won. They have not lost a series in July, which has allowed them to kind of gain back that ground they lost. They're right there fighting for first place and that second and first wild card spot. 7-3 since the All-Star break. And Joe mentioned off the top of the show that they're still not hitting well, but they're getting better.
They're getting better, and while their team batting average isn't good, going into yesterday they had the best batting average with runners in scoring position in the National League since the All-Star break.
There you go.
And then what that is?
And then the stinker of the Saturday game. But
it was like 344 going into yesterday.
Okay.
So they're not hitting a lot, but they're getting some clutch hits finally, which is huge. And while we're talking about guys, what do you guys think of Tyler O'Neill? He's like a different hitter since he's come back up. He's going the other way. He's getting singles. He looks a lot more confident and comfortable at the plate.
Do you guys find it a coincidence that after we talked to Randy Carricker and what he said about Tyler O'Neill, he goes on, I'm not saying he's on a tear, but he's been hitting.
Well, we all know that Tyler O'Neill listens to our show religiously and takes everything we say to heart.
While he's working out. So, yeah, I mean, sure, Randy Carricker could be on our show talking about Tyler O'Neill listening to it, and he's like, yeah, you know what? They're right. I'm going to do this and start getting hits. I mean, it's coincidence more than anything. Come on. No, I find it funny, though, how after we talked to Randy Carricker that day, he's been on a mini tear.
All right, well, let's have Randy back on and have him talk about Jack Flaherty.
Right.
I mean,
talk about everybody.
Yeah, just talk about the whole team.
I think it just comes down to the fact that he knows he's going to play every day. He's getting constant at-bats, and he's just relaxed. He feels like he belongs again, and, he's been a force.
Yes, he's been what we were looking for from him this year when we thought he was going to be potentially a starting outfielder. And like you said, now that he's getting playing time, he's consistently in there. He knows his spot's there, and he just goes out there and plays the game. And you haven't really talked about anything defensively with him. His offense, like you said, has been has been there, and it's been great. So, hopefully that, we can kind of keep him in that lineup and keep his offense up there. And who knows? I mean, his name has come up in trade rumors as well. Another guy that I don't think the Cardinals will trade, but if someone comes away and blows them away with an offer, it might be something they have to at least think about at that point, but we'll see. Now, Joe, now you can look ahead.
So
now look ahead.
You have Pittsburgh for 4. You have, after that series, you have a very tough series, the 0-4 reunion weekend, but that's just so small.
So we're jumping all the way.
The Houston Astros are this weekend, and it's a good thing the Cardinals are 7-3 after the All-Star break, because you're going to be facing some tough teams. After the Astros, you have the Cubs, Dodgers, not in order, A's and Dodgers. I was going to say not in that order, but yeah. So you're going to have some pretty tough competition. The A's aren't a bad team by any means. The Dodgers, we already know what the Dodgers are capable of. And the Cubs play the Cardinals all the time like it's the World Series. And they're a good team too. But
they are. But real quickly, as we're talking about that, let's look at our records against those teams. Cubs are coming to St. Louis. Pretty sure we're 3-0. Swept the Cubs in St. Louis.
Yep.
We played the Dodgers.
Swept them 4.
Pretty sure the Cardinals are the only team to win a series against the Dodgers this year, and we swept a 4-game series. The Dodgers don't scare me.
No, I mean, you got one guy in Walker Buehler that pitches well against us, and we beat him this year.
Yeah.
Clayton Kershaw is probably going to fake an injury, I'm sure, not pitching against the Cardinals when they come to when we play them in LA. Houston's like you said, Houston is a tough series. Pittsburgh is still going to be a tough series.
Yeah, I mean
that's the thing. Don't look over this.
No.
You can't look.
No,
you can't look ahead.
I'm not. But you also got to think. You got to take care of this. Take care of that business, because you got some tough teams, and I'm not going to say you can afford to lose any of those games, but if you do well in this series, it gives you a little bit of a cushion, a little bit in terms of over 500, and with the Cubs terrible on the road. I think they're going out on a road trip.
They do. They go to San Francisco today, and they're 18 games under 500 on the road.
So this is a chance for the Cardinals to make some hay, especially over the next 4 days.
But we've said that before again when they had the soft schedule and they played teams that were terrible. That's the thing. I mean, you needed to take advantage. You say, "Oh, you win a couple games during this and you have a cushion." No, you don't have a cushion. You're still trailing in the division. You're still trailing in the wild card. You've lost multiple games to teams that you should have beaten that would have given you a cushion to when you hit this meat of the schedule against the tougher teams. You could have risked maybe losing one here, one there. Now at this point, you have to win these series in order to stay competitive against some of the toughest teams in the league. And yes, the Cubs are not one of the toughest teams. They just happen to be in first place because everybody in the Central is struggling, especially on the road. But like you said, when you start facing the Houstons and the Dodgers and other teams like that, that's when winning those series earlier would have helped you in the future. Now we're at a point where we have to win the series against these tough teams in order to stay competitive.
Well, and the National League is so bunched, not just the Central, the National League is so bunched together with the wild card. I mean, you've got so many teams, although there are a few teams starting to fall off, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh starting to struggle. San Francisco got kind of hot, but I think they're still a team that's going to sell off from everything that I've read. It sounds like they're still planning on trading Bumgarner, but yeah, you really don't have a cushion to lose any games, or you're going to fall back in the wild card race as well as the division.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just pulling up the standings right now. We'll take a quick look at. Go ahead and make your point, Joe. I pull up these standings.
With the Cardinals facing Pittsburgh, facing Houston, facing the Cubs, Oakland, and the Dodgers, you're going to figure out what this team's going to be. This is do or die right now. No,
I don't know, though. That's the thing. We thought the same thing when they were facing these really terrible teams that we're going to be like, oh, they're going to go out there, they're going to prove themselves, and then they crap the bed.
My point is it's do or die right now. So you have look at the point in the season. You're going to be in August by the time you face the Cubs. Okay? So why not say these are huge? August and then September, that's it.
They are huge. I don't think anybody's saying they're not huge.
No, but
just saying that this team has shown at different points this year where you've had moments where you're like, okay, this is the time where they're going to boom, click, and start pushing. We could say the same thing.
What if they get that arm by then? get an arm by then, like Stroman, or
We're still going to need a hitter.
Let's say they pull off a Bumgarner deal.
Do they need a hitter? I mean, I know it would be nice, but if you get Marcell Ozuna back, which it sounds like he might be back by the Cubs series, I mean, it's going to take a little while.
I still think you need a left-handed bat.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, even if it's somebody that's coming off the bench, I still think you need a left-handed bat at some point. And yes, you could argue like a guy like Tommy Edman could be that guy, but I still think if they were able to find some sort of even semi-powerful left-handed bat, it would help.
Here's the name for you. Would you be interested? Hunter Pence.
Whew, he's not. Is he a lefty?
Yeah, he's a switch hitter.
Switch hitter.
Hunter Pence is not a switch hitter.
Yes, he is.
No, he's. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, Hunter Pence is.
Are you kidding me? Yes.
No,
I'm not kidding you.
Hunter Pence, I've never seen him hit left-handed in my life.
Yeah, he does. Pretty sure he is.
I don't think so.
Take a quick look. I mean,
I think he is.
That would be intriguing. I would. That would be very, very intriguing if he is a switch hitter. Let's see.
Pretty sure he is. Maybe
Nope, that's right.
Oh, okay.
That's right. I mean, that's still an interesting name to just throw out there, though.
Yeah, it is.
He's still playing with the Giants, right?
No, he's in Texas.
Texas. Okay.
He was an all-star.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean,
he's not an everyday player in the National League at this point, but would be a guy. That could be one of those crusty veterans that's got an experience, like say Will Clark in 2001 that you bring in and might set this team on fire for a week or two.
He's definitely got passion. He's definitely got fire behind himself that I could see that being a move. Like I said, I'd like to have a left-handed semi-power bat, but if you bring in a guy like Pence, that could be somebody that, because he hits righties and lefties pretty well. Yeah. So, I mean, I just think that's the thing is you just need to find something that can neutralize like a good right-handed reliever. And like I said, it's not a guy that needs to come off, that needs to start as a lefty, but maybe someone that can come off the bench in that left-handed hitting role.
Before we move on, because I know we have to soon, I want to ask you guys, wouldn't it be interesting if the Cardinals traded for Lance Lynn?
No.
Mm-mm.
Why? The guy's got 14 wins in the American League.
Because he's not what we need. We need a power pitcher.
He is a power pitcher. He uses his fastball 90% of the time.
Just because you throw a fastball doesn't mean you're a power pitcher.
And my biggest problem with Lance Lynn is a 5, maybe 6 inning pitcher at this point. You need a guy that can go out there and give you 7 consistently.
He takes the ball every 5th day, though, Scott.
So does everybody else in our rotation. I mean, how many times have we not used the same 5 guys? Ponce has had 3 starts. Other than that, we've had the same 5-man rotation all year.
All right.
So I just think you need a guy that can give you more innings than what Lance Lynn's capable of. That's just my thought on that.
So we'll move into some trade rumors then. I mean, we've talked a little bit already about how the fact that Martinez and O'Neill are guys that are names have been thrown around, but not necessarily on the move. Another name that's kind of been thrown out there that probably won't be moved is a guy like Harrison Bader, a guy that the Cardinals are looking to move because he's a free agent is a Michael Wacha. Obviously, his numbers this year and his pitching over the last few years and injury history doesn't bode well for him being the marquee name going out there. But is there any way that you could see a guy like Wacha being moved at the deadline?
I don't know.
Not as a fan, as an analyst.
No, I don't know what you get for him. The guy's been injured most of it. Like when he hasn't pitched a full year since 2014, maybe 2013. So and he didn't even come up halfway through 2013. So that wasn't even. He hasn't pitched a full year in the
I think he has pitched a full year.
Maybe
one or two, maybe.
I think he's got a couple of 18-win seasons.
Okay, a couple 18-win seasons. Other than that, what do you have to go off of?
But once again, you talk about a crusty vet that has playoff experience and success. I mean, yes, his play over the last year or two hasn't been up to snuff, but a change of scenery sometimes helps a guy. And if a team's looking for a 5th starter or a long reliever, just look what happened with Joe Kelly in Boston.
Right.
I mean, that Michael Wacha could go to an American League team. They can install him as the long reliever, and all of a sudden he comes out there against a league that he doesn't see a whole lot of and absolutely dominate and be a key piece to a potential World Series run.
Well, and you got to look at the fact, too, that Walker's only 20. He's still only 27 years old.
Yep.
And the last couple of years, his injuries haven't been arm injuries.
Yep.
And last year before he had that oblique, he was on pace to be an all-star. So there are teams out there that would probably jump at a shot at Michael Wacha. What you're going to get in return,
isn't going to be much.
No, it's not.
So-
Even maybe a low round draft pick, if
Well,
that.
see,
That might be what they need, though.
or you might be able to get a middle relief pitcher from Akawaka. I think the Waka trade would be part of something else. I think if you're going to move Waka, it's because you're going to get Stroman or Bumgarner or one of those guys. You're not just going to trade Michael Waka and then have that open spot in your rotation. He's not really in the rotation, and Ponce is kind of taking that. But you've got to have another guy that can jump into that role that he has and fill that.
Most definitely.
Which would probably be Ponce.
Right. So on the flip side of that, guys that are potentially out there are Marcus Stroman, Madison Bumgarner. Will Smith's name has been thrown out there as a potential guy coming into the bullpen as well. Being able to find some way to package Bumgarner and Smith and getting them in here, what would it cost you? That's definitely a question that we would have to ask Tom Ackerman next week. But I mean, something that quickly as we're getting ready to move on to the next topic, what kind of things would you be thinking would be coming back to us, and who would have to give up for a Bumgarner Smith kind of combo?
Bumgarner, I don't think you'd have to give up much, knowing he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. Now, I've heard the Cardinals, among other National League teams who are in the hunt, are on his no trade list. He did this because he wants to work out a deal with any team he goes to. Are the Cardinals,
which in turn would mean that they would have to give up a little bit more, because the Giants would know that he would be signing with whoever. If it's a no trade list team, you would know that he'd be working on a deal to stay with that team longer, which means the Giants would want more in return because they know that they're not going to have that chance to re-sign him.
Well, here's the thing, that's going to be the big question. Can the Cardinals re-sign him?
Oh, there is no question about that. If he agrees to come to the Cardinals, the Cardinals would be able to sign him. They have the money. He would fit in perfectly here.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's not a matter of if they could. It'd be a matter of, are they going to?
Yeah, and those 8 teams that he put on his no trade clause were basically the 8 teams that he'd be willing to go to.
Yeah.
You had the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Astros.
Teams he would want to sign with
Cardinals.
next year if he made it to free agency.
Yeah,
most definitely. So, well, that's leading off. We're going to move on now to the meat of the order, which is going to be Blues talk. And I know people are like, what? It's the end of July. What are we talking about the Blues for? Well, just so you guys remember, they won the freaking Stanley Cup this year.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did, which means we can talk about the Blues whenever the hell we want, because they're still doing their thing. They're doing everything with the Stanley Cup and all that. But first thing I want to hit on is we pretty much have signed almost everybody that needs to be signed. So just do a quick rundown of the contracts that have been signed over the last couple weeks. Robbie Fabry coming back on a 1-year, $900,000 contract. Sanford signing for 2 years at $3 million. Husso, 1-year, 2-way deal at $700,000 to come back as the AHL goalie. And then just yesterday, Oscar Sundqvist gets a 4-year, $11 million deal.
Were you surprised at that deal?
Yes, I was. Here's why. because he last year was his breakout year. Now, I'm not saying it'll be a bust. I'm not saying that at all. I just feel like that's too much of a risk, especially for a guy who's had one good year and he didn't play much before that. So coming into last year, we didn't know the Blues fans didn't know what they were going to get out of Oscar Sundqvist. So it's kind of risky. What do you think, Wags?
2.75 per year, I think, is a hell of a steal.
I mean, it's a steal.
I mean, if he can even play at half the level that he had last year, I think it's actually a really good deal. Because this is a team that's paying Alexander Steen almost $4 million. This is a team that's paying Jaden Schwartz almost $4 million. For second, third line production. I mean, for Steen, fourth line production. So if you're going to pay $2.75 for Sundqvist over the next 4 years, look, he's young. He's a multiple Stanley Cup winner now, because he won this cup with Pittsburgh a few years ago. And yes, he wasn't really a part of that team, but he was a part of that team. So he has that Stanley Cup experience. He won last year. He had a hell of a year playing with who he played with. And he's going to be playing with those guys again this year if they can get Barbashev re-signed, which we'll talk about in a second. So, yes, there's going to be a hangover this year with the Blues. Obviously, every team goes through a Stanley Cup hangover. But I think for $2.75 million per year for the next 4 years, I think it's actually a low risk, high reward kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it that way, but
but you could also look at it the other way, right?
Yeah, but I gotta say, for Binnington, the two-year deal that he got, what did you think about that deal?
Well, I mean, it's a completely different thing. You know, I mean, Sundqvist was a
Joe
restricted
doesn't
free.
like that deal, by the way.
I know he doesn't.
I
like
do.
that deal.
I do. No, I like giving a guy who deserves it $4 million. I just don't like. Don't like a backup goaltender making $4 million.
There's no
Jake
comp
Allen.
for him. There was no way that the Blues could sit there and be like, this is what we offer a rookie goaltender coming into restricted free agency who just won us a Stanley Cup for the first time in history. There's no comp to that. The fact that they were able to get him signed for what they did, in my mind, he won't say that he took a discount, but he took a little bit of a discount and is still kind of betting on himself going into, because when the contract ends, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Right. So he is essentially betting on himself. He's making good money. He got a good raise. He's making a little bit more than Jake Allen, but he's betting on himself to have a hell of a next 2 years and be able to parlay that into one of those big time contracts come unrestricted free agency. So I think it actually was a great deal for both the Blues and for Binnington.
I think it works out well for the Blues because he's making like $100,000 more than Jake, something like that.
Yeah, not much, but
so that way, if something happens and they have to switch roles, they're still pretty even. So either way, your starter and your backup, there's not a whole lot of difference there. Or if you end up having to split them to where they play 50-50, it's basically an even, there's not one of them going, man, I'm making this and he's making that. And
I should be playing more, that
right.
sort of thing. I mean, and you can't sit there and say in Allen's case, he didn't lead them to a Stanley Cup, so he doesn't have that over his head. Yes, Binnington has that, but Allen has more experience right. and all that. So, and we go back and forth on this about how this league is turning into a 1A, 1B goalie league.
Yeah.
I mean, so the fact that you've got Allen, who has at stretches been unbelievable, and as Joe would say, stole us a playoff series. I mean, Jordan Binnington stole us a Stanley Cup. So there's that too. So the fact that you have two guys that even if one struggles, one could pop in and probably play well. And we also know that Jake Allen, whether he say it or not, he thrives on that pressure, right. I think, of having someone that is pushing him. Chad Johnson was never going to push Jake Allen for that top spot.
Right.
And we know going into the season that Binnington is probably the number one. That's going to light a fire under Jake's ass, and he's going to play his mind out this year, I believe. And you're going to go back to that situation of having a Jake and an Elliott, and a Jake and Hutton. Not Jake and Hutton.
Or not Jake and Hutton.
But a Jake and Hutton and a Jake and Elliott situation where both guys pushing themselves to play very, very well and at a top level. I think even with a hangover this year, the Blues are going to have really good goaltending.
They should.
So I'm excited.
And there's still that question. I mean, I know he had a great season this year, but it wasn't a full season. We still don't really know what Jordan Binnington is.
Yeah, we don't.
I mean, was he a flash in the pan, or is he the
I feel like that's too many games to be a flash in the pan. I feel like that's a big enough sample size to not say that.
I made the comparison. I thought Binnington was along the lines a lot of Cam Ward when he came in and played for Carolina. And he didn't have as many games as Binnington did. So yes, credit to that. Binnington, we have seen him more than we would have seen Cam Ward. But then Cam Ward came along, did sort of the same thing. And now you see him and it's kind of like, what exactly is Cam Ward? Is he a really good goaltender? Was he a good product of a system? What was he? So, you may have that same sort of thing with Binnington during a full season. What are you going to get out of him? Is he going to be able to, kind of stretch his body long enough to play a full season in the NHL and possibly more playoffs? We'll see. I have a little bit of confidence that he will be good, and having a guy like Jake Allen who can spell him if need be is a great situation for the Blues to be in.
Right. I think Binnington's going to be okay, but I think it was really smart. I'm going to disagree with somebody who I know wanted him traded, but I think it's really smart to have Jake there as your backup.
I mean, I agree for the one reason that he mimicked every goaltender the Blues faced in the playoffs. He mimicked what the goaltender was going to show. I mean, that's valuable in itself.
I mean, most goaltenders can look at film and at least mimic what another goaltender is doing. So, I mean, yes, I'm not taking credit away from that.
You don't hear stories of that too often.
Well, yeah, but you don't hear a whole lot of teams winning the Stanley Cup. So,
well, it just proves what a good teammate Jake
is.
Yeah.
I want to ask you guys something. I posted something on the page about, since Sonny got the deal.
Hey, look at that.
You got Barbashev.
$4.35 million left to use. Barbashev and Edinson are both restricted free agents.
Wait. Armstrong wants that $2 million cushion.
Army wants about $2 million remaining.
But how much do you
See
think?
that? It says
Okay,
it right
okay,
there.
okay. I want you guys to each give your predictions. What do each of them get? Go ahead, Wags.
I think Barbashev resigns and Edmondson is traded.
No, I mean, what does Barbashev get?
I think he gets around 2.
What about you?
Probably about 2, and I agree. I think Edmondson gets traded. I think there's a possibility that Edmondson gets traded, and then they still figure out a way to bring Pat Maroon back.
I don't think that's gonna happen. Just because
it's not likely, but yeah.
Just because I think he'll probably be priced out in a sense where not that teams are beating down the doors. I mean, Calgary and Edmonton made a trade over the weekend. Lucic for James Neal, which means Lucic is in Calgary, which means Calgary doesn't necessarily need a big guy. James Neal probably isn't going to play in Edmonton, maybe a little bit. So Edmonton might be still in that mold of we need to find a big body for the front of the net. You could also look at a possible return to New Jersey as well. I know that's not a name that the team that's been kind of thrown out there, but New Jersey's really close to being a very, very good team. So, if Maroon sticks out there a little bit longer, the Devils might be one of those teams that kind of jumps in at the last minute and says, hey, we'll give you this $4 million over 2 years. Go for that. And the Blues wouldn't be able to match that.
Right. Otherwise, I think it's going to come down now to that. What team offers him money? Because if a bad team offers him a bunch of money, maybe he does take less to come back to St. Louis because, hey, I got a chance to defend that Stanley Cup and maybe win another one. So, I think it just comes down to where the offers come from at this point and how close the Blues can get to it.
Well, and it also goes back to Joe's point about Doug Armstrong wanting to keep about $2 million open. So if you have 4.3 left and you sign Barbashev for $2 million, that leaves you 2.3. Even if Edmonton signs and you trade him, it still just leaves you that 2.3 million roughly to keep. So if you really is sticking hard to that $2 million remaining mark, that means someone else has to go as well if you want to keep Pat Maroon. So is that something that you would look at and be like, okay, well, who else could be somebody that goes? I mean, I know that they had talked about Braden Shen being a potential trade option. I don't think you trade Braden Shen. I think you find a way to re-sign him as well, because I think if he, once again, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, if he's willing to stick it out and play the wing for the rest of his time here in St. Louis, then it's a no-brainer to me that you find a way to sign that guy.
And I think that's kind of what it comes down to with him, because you've heard rumors that he wasn't real happy about being moved. So, maybe it comes down to maybe Shen would rather go somewhere else and play center than be on a wing. So I think that has to be considered into it. I mean, I don't think it's likely that Maroon stays, but I think there is a slimmer of a chance that, depending on what happens, he could still end up in St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. And getting the whole gang back together outside of one or two guys might not be a bad idea. I mean, and speaking of Pat Maroon, he had the cup for his day on Saturday.
Went to Charlie Cheeto's downtown.
Well, he opened the day having cereal out of it. Cinnamon Toast Crunch, by the way.
Yep.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Awesome.
Which is great.
Way to
and like you said,
day.
he did go down to Guido's, and he filled it with toasted ravs. I mean, come on. What better St. Louis thing to do? Did you see that Layla was there as well? She was eating toasted ravioli out of there as well.
My cousin, who I know Maroon's fiance, so my cousin that knows her actually went, and they spent the day with him.
Where was our invite, man?
I know. I was thinking the same thing. So, I asked her, I go, how come no one told me this?
So wait a minute.
I saw on Facebook, I saw pictures. I'm like, oh my God, they were with Pat Maroon.
So
it's like, wow.
If your cousin knows Pat Maroon's fiance, why has Pat Maroon not been on this show yet, Joe?
I'm wondering the same thing. And I've been trying to contact, not doing it every day, but I've been trying to contact his fiance and trying to talk to her and see how we can get this done. Hopefully we can get this done. And by that chance he does sign back with the Blues, it should be easier. Now it can happen anyway.
Well,
because with the team that he signs with, they'll be coming here. Or I can get a phone interview. It's just, the thing is, it's going to be tough if he doesn't sign here. If he signs here, it'll be easier.
Well, he was here all last year and we didn't get him on.
It was
somebody's been slacking.
Yeah, come on, Joe. Come on.
And why? How did we go through the whole playoffs without you bringing this up? I mean, we could have had him on during the playoffs.
I kept
that double overtime game 7 winner against Dallas.
I kept asking her, and she kept saying it's so busy right now, like no one can really. I'm like, so I just stopped. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna.
Well, it's not busy anymore. He's not playing right now.
And you should have explained to her how important this show is.
Yeah, this is like the cornerstone. Tyler O'Neill listens to us every day, right?
Right.
Oh my goodness! So today, Chris Butler and Mitch Reinke have the cup in Minnesota. and we're paused on Facebook. Apparently, Facebook's having issues once again. Wonderful. And it's because we have a poor connection, which is odd because this is a hard line. So we're gonna actually end the show here on Facebook, and we're gonna reconnect and get that restarted for you guys. But you can still hear us on Chow. You can still hear us on YouTube, and you'll also be able to hear us during the podcast as well. So you don't have to worry about that. I want to talk about one more thing when it comes to the Blues. We got about 10 minutes or so left of the Blues talk. Renovations at Enterprise are still going on. Obviously, they couldn't start till after the Blues season was over. They really weren't going to start anyway. So even the Blues having gone on the run that they didn't really affect when they were going to start. I think July 6th was the last official thing there anyway. So it's not like the Blues winning the Stanley Cup pushed back renovations. They started working on the escalators near the end of the season. They're continuing to work on that. New seating is going in on the lower bowl. So all those purple seats are gone.
I never understood why they use purple.
Well,
I mean, did you?
Well, think about it. Back when they built this place, it was the mid '90s, and that was the same time that they had the angled red, gold, blue jerseys. So at the time, purple was a hot color, I think, and they just went with it. I'm guessing, maybe. Who knows? And they also, it was announced that the team will be receiving about $70 million in state subsidies as well. So that was a fight that had been going on for a while with the Blues in the city, trying to get some help. Obviously, when the Rams left, that was an issue. The Cardinals get some state subsidies as well. So the fact that they're getting some money to kind of help along with the renovations really shows you that the state is kind of backing the Blues here on out. And they did name them the official team of Missouri, which, I mean, you got the Blues and you got the Mavericks. So, I mean, there really wasn't much choice, I guess.
Well, and, you've got to put that money into the stadium to get other things. We were losing out on a lot of stuff. We're going to other places. We had to get that money in there and get the Savage Center.
Enterprise
Center. I know. I still want to call it. I still want to call it Keel Center. Kind of like I still call Riverport.
Oh, of course.
But you had to get that money in there because you were losing out on a lot of stuff, and so you needed to invest in that money to keep the wrestling championships, to get them to come back, to get all kinds of things. We're leaving and going to Memphis and Nashville and other places in the region, and St. Louis was losing out on a lot of tourist money. So that was a must do for the city.
Yeah, well, and after over the summer and stuff, you heard about the gymnastic finals coming to St. Louis. You're going to have, I think the SEC basketball tournament is going to be coming to St. Louis soon. You're going to obviously find some way to get the NCAAs back here. That's going to happen as well, whether it's a final or anything like that. Who knows? But I think having these renovations done will allow them to make a really, really good pitch to be able to bring back the NCAA finals.
You also got to think you have the All-Star game this year. I mean,
All-Star game for the NHL is coming this year. I know, the whole Stanley Cup win kind of made you forget about what was coming along this upcoming season.
And real quickly, the renovations, there's still a rumor that the Pelicans in New Orleans are looking for a new city.
Yeah.
So you never know. Maybe at some point you do get that NBA team in St. Louis, which would be huge.
And I think St. Louis could support the NBA. There's a big debate in this town whether they could, because we lost one team. And
but see
Hawks,
that was a whole different situation. I think. I mean, it wasn't like the Cardinals or the Rams or anything like that where the owners were itching. I mean, I think that the whole St. Louis Hawks thing was a whole different beast. Right. And I think St. Louis could support an NBA team. But at this point, with the fact that we're so close to an MLS team, I think the seasons are different enough that you would still be able to support that NBA team. And really, if you think about it, you would have in the same season, you would have NHL and NBA going on. You'd have the end of the baseball season and essentially the start of the baseball season as well. And then you would also have the start of the MLS season going on during the NHL NBA's playoffs leading into baseball's middle of the season. So really, you would have stuff going on year round in St. Louis. And that may cannibalize some Cardinals stuff, that may cannibalize some Blues stuff and all that as well. But the fact that, the Blues and the Cardinals right now are such a tight group, and they're really, really tight with the MLS for the Lou group as well. That those three are really going to, help each other out. And I think with the right situation, you'd be able to add that fourth team in there and really have that just huge cohesiveness between the city and all four of those sports teams. And you know what? who needs the NFL at that point?
Or in that case, the XFL. I mean,
Oh, we're not going back to that again.
They did have their tryouts last week or a week or two ago. So I mean, the XFL team is moving along a little bit. I mean, it's there.
It's there.
It's there. Azahir Hakim is going to be the wide receivers coach.
He's going to teach him how to
Drop the ball. Yeah, pretty much.
Hope he's
no,
the
you
kick
should have
return
Denario
specialist
Alexander
coach.
doing that, actually.
Wow.
Do what?
Hakim
Denario Alexander.
was here much longer.
After that
Hakeem
game in
was-
Seattle where he dropped a sure touchdown
Yeah,
pass.
one drop. Hakim was known for dropping, I mean, electrifying punt returns and some nice touchdown receptions, but he was also known for dropping the ball a lot. So,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he dropped a kick return in a playoff game that pretty much cost us a chance at back-to-back trips to the Super Bowl, possibly in New Orleans.
I mean, who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? So, have you guys? I mean, obviously the renovations last year. I mean, you guys been to some of the game. You went to the games last year. I mean, the beer garden stuff that they installed there, the renovations that they did last year. What did you guys think of those? Do you think that you saw it and you're like, okay, this is a massive improvement?
Oh, absolutely.
It was unbelievable to look at. They had all these beer kegs just sitting on top of each other, and it had Bud Light sitting on. That's so cool to me. Like, I don't know how they created a whole wall of it. I'd love to know how they did it, but you know, the beer garden's cool. You got the Jack Daniels Club in there too. I mean, it's fun. The only problem I had were the escalators, because I would always sit, and you would always sit because you had season tickets, and you still do this year. You sit upstairs, so you have one escalator going up, and then when the other escalator was open, you had that one going down, even at the end of the game. Now, why? Why have one escalator going one way?
Because they were the ones that were originally installed back in like 1994 or something like that. So, I mean, but like we said, they're working on the elevators now. They've been working on them, which means hopefully that they're improving it to the point where, you know, A, they're safer, and B, then maybe they're a little wider. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing with the escalators, but obviously they're improving it.
Do you think the Blues are going to lose money a little bit with some of the seats coming? With some of the seats coming out, because they had to take out, I think, a couple thousand seats.
Did they win the Stanley Cup this year?
No, we're not losing money in that sense. I'm talking in season revenue when it comes to you're going to have seats taken out.
Yeah, but they can also raise the prices of the other seats.
Well, and they're making that money back in the new club sections and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
They're not losing money doing that.
Yeah, you're going to lose some. I mean, you see it. They are losing some fans, some season ticket holders, because they lost their seats or their seats got moved or what have you. But the vast majority of people are going to continue to upgrade their season tickets. They're going to continue to buy their season tickets. And like you said, the club seats, the executive seats, all those things are you know, obviously a little bit higher price. They're going to be continuing to make their money. They're not going to be, they didn't go into this with the fact that with the idea of, okay, we're going to take these out. Yes, we're going to lose some money. No, they took them out with the intention of adding things that were going to make them more money.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, yes, you're maybe you pissed off a couple fans because they lost their corner seat or they lost this seat or they lost this sight line. But in the grand scheme of things, the team's still going to make money, and they won the Stanley Cup, so their revenue stream is doing okay at the moment.
Yeah, very good point there.
So
I was just wondering, because you are losing seats, and when it comes to losing seats, yes, you have the higher price tickets, but you're losing seats. You know what I mean?
But
It's gonna. How many seats were gonna be taken out? Do you guys know?
I have no idea.
nah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not party to that
Okay.
that information,
All right.
unfortunately.
So I know we got to move on here soon, but just ask.
Well, Scott's got something.
Go ahead,
no.
Scott.
They did move seats out, but they didn't lose capacity because they just moved that capacity to the sections, like we said, for higher prices. So basically, they're still making more money, even though they took seats out. Technically, they didn't take out capacity of the building. See what I'm saying? So they actually,
You got more places for people to stand around, congregate, that sort of stuff. And for me, that's actually, I think that's a little bit cooler. I mean, and knowing sitting in seats and stuff like that, it's as the game goes on, it kind of gets.
Not at hockey games, though.
Yeah, at hockey games, you still get to the point where you're like, I'm sitting in the seats. Oh my gosh, standing up, letting people get in front of you, all that kind of stuff. Having places where you can kind of stand, congregate, watch the game, and still enjoy it, I think is actually something, at least for me as a fan, I enjoyed having that. And I didn't get a chance to utilize it, but I'm hoping maybe this year I can and see what it's like.
and that's kind of cool change the topic, but that's kind of like the Bud Terrace they put in at Busch Stadium. And
Exactly.
If you've been up there, it's kind of that same vibe. I mean, they've even got lounge chairs and recliners and stuff up there that you can sit and drink a beer and watch the game.
And it fits in with the society that we're living in now with
Right.
millennials and the short attention spans and stuff like that. It gives that ability to kind of have that free flow of you're not confined to one spot. You
Right.
can kind of move around a little bit. So, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at, and we'll see. So now we're going to hit the stretch run. 15 minutes or so of talking some golf.
We're going to talk golf for
What
15
was-
minutes. No, I'm kidding.
Joe, wake up. Joe, wake up.
That was a joke, dude. Dang.
So the only reason I want to talk about this is because, it was the British Open. Nobody could watch it because, it started at like 1 a.m. So you had to watch the replays. But I thought it cool. Shane Lowry won.
Right.
They were playing this at a Northern Ireland course. And guess where Shane Lowry grew up?
England.
Canada. No, he grew up in Ireland. So it was really cool because whenever you see those, just because of what the Blues did this year, when you see that kind of hometown guy win something like that, it's really, really cool. He finished at 15 under, 6 shots ahead of Tommy Fleetwood, who had a chance to kind of push Lowry and never really did. So really, I mean, the fact that he went into the round 4 up, it was almost inevitable that he was going to win because no one really ever got close and really pushed him.
Right.
So it did kind of lose a little bit of its luster because you're like, okay, well, this guy's going to probably win.
Right.
So, yeah, but it was really cool. It was his first major championship. You got to see him celebrating in Ireland with his countrymen, with his family and all that stuff. And that was really, really cool. And it's for me, it's really nice to see hometown guys winning things.
Right.
So
it'll be interesting to see what the TV ratings ended up being, like you said, because most people had to watch it in replay basically or record it. And then with Tiger not being anywhere around for the final couple of days, plus the fact that, it was somebody from Northern Ireland that nobody really knew, and the fact that it was pretty much predetermined going into Sunday that he was going to win. I wonder how many people actually paid attention yesterday.
it's a very, very good question. And not just Tiger not being around, but Phil Mickelson wasn't around. Rory McIlroy, the guy who was
Right.
favored to win this thing, he missed the cut too.
Right.
And those are just 3 of the 60 or 70 guys that missed the cut, and a good 10 to 15 of those were named guys that you would tune in normally to watch these tournaments. They weren't even there. Brooks Koepka was, though.
Yeah.
And he finished 4th, I believe, tied for 4th this major. Never really was a factor, but he gutted it out. I mean, it was a course that he struggled at, and the high winds really kind of threw his game off, I think.
What do you think of Brooks Koepka? He's definitely a little bit arrogant, a little bit cocky.
You know what? I feel like you have to be at least to be a pro athlete, period. And some people would make the argument golfers aren't pro athletes, but they are. Let's be honest. And you have to be a little bit cocky. Is he a little bit too much?
Yeah, he's cocky, but he's also kind of arrogant jerk. He's got that little bit, I'm better. I think I'm better than you. I mean, I know you have to have that to a certain extent, but his is just comes off kind of jerkish more.
Can he back it up?
He has backed it up.
He definitely has backed it up, but he has, in my mind, he's got that Tiger in him.
He does to a certain extent. The thing that bugs me is that he likes to whine that nobody gives him enough credit, which I don't care for that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And, especially as a pro athlete, it's like, well, dude, you're a pro athlete. So, I mean, you're getting some credit. I mean, Obviously you're on TV, you've won the majors, you get your TV time, all that stuff. You're getting credit. You're beating some of the best players in the world, and you've won a bunch of majors over the last couple of years. Do I think he's a flash in the pan? Maybe. I don't think we're ever going to see anybody dominate the PGA Tour like Tiger did, or like Jack did, or like Arnie did.
No, I mean, those are once in a couple of decades players, basically. Every 20 years or 30 years, those guys come along, basically.
But in my mind, it almost seems like he thinks he is one of those guys. And I can see where that cockiness and that arrogance comes down is, look, I think I'm like this, but like I agree with you in a sense that, yeah, I think it's a little over the top. It's he strikes me as a bro.
Yeah,
he's not gonna eclipse what Rory McIlroy has done either.
I mean, I don't think Rory's done a whole lot though. That's the thing.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of fame, in terms of people knowing him. I don't think he's going to be around long enough for people to
outside of hardcore golfing fans and people in Ireland. How many people could pick Rory McIlroy out of a lineup?
I mean, that's a good point too. But you can say that about every golfer.
Well, exactly. Could anybody pick out Tiger Woods from a lineup? Even non-golf fans?
Yes.
Probably everybody in the world.
Phil Mickelson?
I don't know that everybody could pick out Phil Mickelson.
Not as many as Tiger, but
Arnold Palmer is that.
Well, yeah, but how many of those people know him as a golfer and how many know him as a drink?
Or a Pennzoil spokesman for years and years and years.
But I mean, we can say that with every sport. Like,
not necessarily. I mean, there's
not the legends though.
Yeah.
I mean, for that matter, how many people? If Jack Nicholson walked down the street, how many people would know it was him?
You know, not many.
Nicholson or Nicholas?
I was
like, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would know about Jack Nicholson.
I did say that. Nicholas. I did say Nicholson. Yeah, Nicholas.
That's a good point. I mean, Mickelson, yeah, more people would know him than Nicholas, but
yeah, like Rory is not in that level. I mean, even you look at like a Ricky Fowler, guys that golf people know who these guys are, but the rest of the world, unless they're golfing fans, they don't know who these people are.
BJ Singh.
Once again, golfers, golf fans know, but that's like a way deep dive, man. Like when I saw him at the Open when I was there, I was like, dude, that's BJ Singh, and people. I'm like, people won't care about that. He was playing one of the first groups out on the day. I mean, VJ is definitely not what he was when Tiger was at his heyday as well. But I mean, people aren't going to see. They know Tiger, they know Palmer. That's about it.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, Nicholas is going to be a guy that people will know the name, I think, but they won't know who he is. And that's just the rest of it. I mean, Rory's the same way. Phil is probably the same way. Ricky. Brooks Koepka is going to be one of those too, where he's a good golfer, but he's not going to change golf, and he's not going to change the normal people's perception of golf. When Tiger came along, he changed the perception of golf.
Tiger made golf cool.
He did. He made golf cool, and he made it inclusive to a lot of people.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of these older golf courses are still not making it inclusive for everybody.
Nope.
So, there's still a long ways to go in that aspect, but a guy like Koepka is not going to be one of those guys that transcends golf. Even Rory McIlroy is not going to transcend golf. He's a white guy from Ireland.
Right.
That's not one of those, oh man, you got to look at this. This is a guy that's playing that you should be watching. Tiger was the last guy and probably the only guy. Now, if you have the next thing would be if a woman came onto the tour and absolutely started dominating. That would be the next transcendent thing, I think, if for golf would be if that would happen.
Kind of like when Michelle Wee tried to do that.
Yep. Annika Sorenstam, too.
Yeah.
She was another one that was kind of like, hey, I probably could ply my trade there, but that would be the only next transcendent thing, I think, in golf would be if that were to happen. So, I don't know. I mean, I hope there's a guy that comes out and absolutely dominates, but I don't think we're going to see a Tiger Woods type again, at least for a while.
It'll be a while. I mean, there'll be another one. It may be another 10 years, but there will be another one at some point. And it'll be somebody that grew up watching Tiger.
I mean, it's going to have to be because there's just, like you said, there's not been anybody that's been as dominant as him. So it's not like you're going to have guys that grow up in Ireland. They're going to be watching McIlroy and now Shane Lowry. You're going to have guys growing up in England that have watched English golfers. You're going to have a lot of Americans growing up and watching other guys yes, you're going to have them watching Tiger and Phil, but you're going to have them watching Ricky Fowler and stuff like that. You're going to have Canadians watching their guys as well. So you're going to have people that are going to be watching these and trying to emulate them. But are you going to have anybody that's going to come out and be a rare dominant force? And that's going to be the thing that you're going to be looking for. And hopefully we see it.
Yeah. Like I said, it could be a while, but it'll happen again.
It will. All right. We're going to move on to the final whistle. We're going to be talking about Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Joe's ready for this. But hold on. Restrain yourself. Because we're going to get there. But first thing we got to talk about is the inductees from yesterday.
No, of course.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you had Harold Baines, Lee Smith, Edgar Martinez, Mike Mussina, Roy Halladay, and the first ever unanimous choice in the Hall of Fame, Mariano Rivera. So I guess the first thing I want to do is I kind of want to get your thoughts on those guys, and then what kind of memories, if you have any of those guys that you're like, that sticks out in my mind as something that really made it a Hall of Fame moment for me.
Okay, so
I know Joe's got a lot, so go for it.
Let's start out with Lisa. I mean, I never got to see Harold Baines, but I've been told by a lot of people, my dad, included.
Oh, I was like, a lot of people, my dad. That's a lot of people? One person?
I mean,
wow,
no.
I know a lot of people.
No, but
because I know two.
He was a good player. He was a great player, deserved to be there. But there were guys like, and I know I bring him up again, and you're gonna give me shit for this. But that's another guy who Chris Russo says shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Now, Scott, I want you to make the argument why he should have been there.
Wait, so who are we talking about? Because you said
Baines.
Harold Baines was a pure hitter. I grew up watching Harold Baines play. My first memories of him, he played for the White Sox for Tony in '83 when they went to the playoffs. But Baines was a good outfielder when he first started playing, turned into a good DH, but he was just a pure hitter. He was a 290, 300 hitter every year that had power and was just
talking to you.
One of those pure hitters. Yeah, you asked me a question.
Sorry. I was just yeah.
But no, Baines was just a pure hitter. He was, like I said, in his early years, good outfielder, had some speed, but he was just a pure solid hitter for his whole career.
With Baines' numbers, why do you think Russo was when this vote came out, Russo, I heard him screaming, but he screams about everything. But he especially screamed saying this guy doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame.
What was his reasoning for that, do you know?
He made an argument like he wasn't as good as, and he made an argument about some other guys, and I'm like, Russo, you're an idiot. So let me look up his numbers real quick because I really want to know if Russo had any reasoning behind this, because I'm having trouble even thinking about it. That he would even. Let me go Harold Baines' career.
I'm gonna guess his argument was that he wasn't a superstar, that he was just a steady player that played for a long time, which is true. He was never like the top 2 or 3 players in the American League, but he was just a constant, steady professional hitter for years and years.
Well, and for me, the Hall of Fame isn't always about name. I mean, like, you could sit there and say, yeah, all the guys in there are names you know of, but there's going to be guys in the Hall of Fame that you don't know who they are that are really good players.
Right.
I mean, that's the biggest thing is the Hall of Fame isn't about, it's not the Hall of Name. Oh, wow. Coin that. Not the Hall of Name. It's the Hall of Fame. And these are guys that are the best in baseball. So if you have the numbers, you should be in there.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing.
All right, so here his career. He had over 9,900 at bats, 9,980 at bats, 2,866 hits, 384 home runs, 289 RBIs. I say that's
his batting average.
Wait,
his career batting average was 289.
So he was basically a 290 hitter, over 300, almost 2,000 hits, over 300 home runs, and how many RBIs did you say?
Actually, it doesn't even say on here.
I'm going to guess it was over 1,000.
Well, probably.
So, I mean, those are pretty solid numbers.
They are pretty solid numbers. I think they're Hall of Fame numbers. I don't know what he was thinking. He also had, if this means anything, a 38.7 career WAR. If that means anything,
that's pretty solid. If you're going by those numbers,
1,628 RBIs.
Yeah, I'd say that's Hall of Fame worthy.
That's pretty good. That's pretty damn good. 127 or 121 OPS plus an 820 OPS, a 465 slugging, 356 on base percentage. Hell, I'd take a 356 on base percentage for any of the Cardinals right now.
So yeah, he, like I said, a pretty solid all around baseball player, basically.
Not the first thing he was wrong about, but this is the most emphatic thing that I thought of, like, really. So Lee Smith is next. He played for the Cardinals, but he went in as a Cub.
Well, he only played for the Cardinals for 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years
of his career. So
yeah, you can't really count. I mean, you can count that because he was a Cardinal, but you can't count it because it was only 4 years.
Except he was, up until Izzy, he was the all-time Cardinal save leader.
Yeah. So you got to count it.
So
Joe's like,
you can't count. He had a 28.9 career WAR.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
70
Let's not get into. Let's
Whoa,
not do the
whoa,
war stuff.
whoa,
I hate
come
that.
on.
No, I'm sorry. Okay.
Come on.
He had 71 wins, 92 losses with a 3.03 ERA.
And how many saves? I think he's fourth all time.
Fourth all time in saves. Why it's not telling me here he was a career closer. So why it's not telling me on Baseball Reference is beyond me.
Oh, because you're on your phone. That's the biggest problem.
It is.
Yeah, because the phone only lets you do so much. So, yeah.
I think he led the league in saves. I know he led the league in saves once when he was with the Cardinals. It might have been twice.
He played for, 17 seasons?
Yeah.
478 saves? It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think like 150, 160 of those were in St. Louis, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Over 1,200 strikeouts. So he was a dominant pitcher. I remember Lee Smith. Here's the thing. I don't remember him as a Cub. I remember him only as a Cardinal. Right. That's the biggest thing. I only remember him as a Cardinal. And the crazy thing is he pitched in St. Louis for 4 years, but he ended up getting traded to the Yankees in 93. And then he played for the Yankees, the Orioles, the Angels, the Reds, and the Expos before his career was over. So, he did not. I mean, here are his numbers. So he had 29 saves for the Cubs in 83, 33, 33, 31, 36, 29, 25, 31. And then in his time between Boston and St. Louis in 1990, he had 31 saves. He had 47 saves for the Cardinals in 91, 43 in 92, and 46 in 93. 46 and 93. So he actually had more saves when he was with the Cardinals in every year that he was with the Cardinals for most of the season. He had more saves than he ever did with the Cubs.
Yeah, I think he went with the Cubs just because he pitched there. That was the team that he pitched with the longest. But if you heard I heard a little tidbit of his induction speech this morning, and he basically said the best years of his career were in St. Louis. That was the happiest time of his career, was pitching for Joe Torre when he was here. There was just some really bad teams that he pitched for. So it's pretty amazing that he had those saves numbers, because those teams didn't win a whole lot of games in the early 90s.
Nope.
And the fact that he was able to get 47, 43, and then 43 again, that's pretty impressive for a team that probably only won 47, 43, and 43.
Right, yeah, that's more than half of their wins those years, I'm sure.
So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I remember Lee Smith as a Cardinal. He basically paved the way, led to Eckersley, led to Jason Isringhausen, which led to Franklin and where so on and so forth. I mean, Lee Smith was a dominant closer, and I'm definitely glad that I was able to watch him as a youngster and be able to see that as essentially I saw a Hall of Famer pitch.
Right. And you think of the run of closers the Cardinals had there in the 90s, because they went from Lee Smith to Tom Hinkie from a year to Dennis Eckersley. I mean, they had a run of really, really good relief pitchers there for a while, closers. Yeah,
that they did. I mean, obviously 2 former A's that were with La Russa, and then moving into another former A in Isringhausen. I mean, basically the A's gave us 3 really good closers.
They did.
So it is what it is. I mean, the A's are always about, the next thing,
right.
The next thing, and the next thing. So, yeah.
So with the next Hall of Famer, I want to get your guys' thoughts. Should a DH be a Hall of Famer?
Is it the position?
Yeah.
Was he dominant at that position?
Yeah.
That's all I need to know.
Edgar Martinez was a dominant player. He hit everything. Martinez only played, I believe, for the Mariners, right?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's amazing it took him this long, but then again, it's like, no one gives credit to designated hitters anymore. I mean, this is the first year that we've seen a DH go into the Hall of Fame, and there's been much discussion. Thank you. Much discussion if a DH should ever go into the Hall of Fame.
Let me just throw some stuff out there for you. 7-time All-Star, 5-time Silver Slugger, 2-time batting title. He won 2 batting titles.
Yeah. That was a good team. I was a big Seattle fan during those days. I loved Ken Griffey Jr., Jay Buhner. I mean, they had a stacked ball club, but he was definitely the middle of that lineup and was as consistent as you could be.
Well, and you look at it, I mean, just going down his numbers, you say he hit everything. He did hit everything. even as a designated hitter, he didn't have what you would consider like massive power, though.
No, he
I mean,
he was not a power hitter.
He had a career year in 2000, which was pretty much Seattle's like most amazing year. He had 37 home runs. Other than that, he never cracked the 30 home run mark.
Yeah.
But he had a career 312 average. So that's a guy that, yeah, you say he's a DH, and you go, when you think of DH, you're like, oh, he's just a power hitter that goes up there and smacks the ball. Dude, the dude could hit.
Yeah, he was just a pure hitter.
And that's the most impressive thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why he did eventually get in, is the fact that, yes, he was a DH, but he was not the prototypical DH.
Right.
He got the hits. He drove in the runs. He hit the home runs, yes. He also stole some bases, 30 career stolen bases. You know, you don't think of a DH, the guy that would steal bases for you. And he wasn't a DH the entire time he was in Seattle. I think they eventually transitioned him, in 1995.
Yeah, he started out as a third baseman.
So, and he still played some third base from time to time. But All-Star was he? MVP. He had MVP votes as well. It finished third in 95. All-Star game, Silver Slugger. Like I said, he sixth in the MVP voting in 2000. So this guy was a guy that did a lot more than you think. And the only reason that he wasn't in there sooner was because he had that moniker of the DH behind his name. Randy Johnson.
Tino Martinez was their first baseman. Yeah, they were stacked for a few years there.
So, yes, Joe.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad.
Again,
it's sad, but you know what?
It's Facebook. What are we going to do? We're going to keep talking, though, because this is our show. And if it comes back on Facebook, then we're going to go for it. So, if not, we'll restart once again. But moving on to the next Hall of Famer, Mike Mussina.
Mike Mussina, I remember him as an Oriole and as a Yankee. More as a Yankee, really, because he won, I think he won 3 World Series with them, maybe. The guy was a good pitcher. What were your thoughts on Mike Mussina?
He was a good pitcher. Another guy who had a long career and just was consistent. I remember, he was with those Yankees teams and won some World Series. I remember him with Baltimore more because he was a better pitcher in Baltimore than he was with the Yankees. Those were his glory years were on those Orioles teams. He was the ace of those teams. And just a consistent guy who's going to win you 16, 17 games every year and threw a ton of innings.
You say 16 or 17 wins. Starting in 92, second year in Baltimore, 18, 14, 16, 19, 19, 15, 13, 18, 11, 17, 18, 17, 12, 13, 15, 11, 20. The dude didn't have a single-digit win in a single-digit season except his first year.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Unbelievably consistent.
Yep. And part of the reason that he didn't get in for so long was the same thing. Never that monster year, just consistent. And a lot of people say
one season under 500.
Yeah. No, he was the model of consistency, but that again comes down to people wanting you to be a superstar to get in. And he deserved to get in. You know, when you do it for that long and you're that good for that long, you should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. 5-time All-Star, 7-time Gold Glove winner.
Yep.
So that's impressive. As a pitcher to win a gold, that's Greg Maddox territory when it comes to Gold Gloves. Yeah. And we'll throw out here's Joe's favorite thing: an 82.8 WAR. Yeah. That's kind of unreal.
Yeah.
That's a number that you throw out there and be like, okay. When you sit there, 36, 40, stuff like that, okay, leave that in. But when you sit there and say an 82.8, that's impressive. 537 games, 270 wins, a 3.68 ERA. For pitching in the American League, that's amazing. That's incredible. And, like I said, you just remember him pitching for Baltimore for so long and then pitching well for the Yankees. That 20-win season in his final year at 39 years of age.
Yep.
20-9 with a 3.37 ERA. I don't even know really how to explain that. Like he was 6th in the Cy Young that year, 5th, 6th, 2nd in the Cy Young in 99, 6th, 5th, 5th, 4th. He was in the Cy Young conversation almost every single year he pitched.
It's amazing,
especially in Baltimore.
Yeah, it's amazing. This guy had a great career, and I can't believe it took this long to get in. Really. For a guy who's been in the Cy Young conversation almost every year he's played. So,
but once again, sometimes it goes back to name recognition, and it shouldn't. Right. It shouldn't. That's why it takes some longer for some of these guys
or
to get
the
in.
PED era, because that was the steroid era when he pitched.
Yeah.
So,
and some people hold it against him that he was only fourth in the Cy Young all those years. He didn't win one. He was, it's, some of the baseball writers are just kind of stingy on who they're going to vote for and why. And,
Very much so. Very, very, very much so. So, all right, now we get into the two guys that are the names, that are the people you would expect to probably have gone in. One that probably wouldn't have gone in his first year if not for something that happened. The other one, a guy that you knew after 10 years was probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So we'll start off with Roy Halladay. Obviously a dominant pitcher, a great pitcher, a no-hitter and a perfect game on his record, all of that. Died in a plane crash. And his wife gave his acceptance speech and all that. So there's a lot of emotion around that. The question I think is, obviously he's a Hall of Famer, but would he have gotten in in his first year if not for the tragedy that occurred?
It's hard to say. I mean, his numbers were good. He would, like you said, he would have gotten in, but probably not the first time.
I don't think so either, which would have been a shame anyway, because yes, he reinvented himself somewhat in Toronto, and then he got traded to the Philadelphia Phillies and won a World Series there and pitched 2 no-hitters in Philadelphia. I mean, the guy was, like we said before, dominant. And the thing was, pitching the second no-hitter in postseason history.
In his very first playoff game.
In his very first, yeah. That's amazing, Wags.
I'm not saying it wasn't.
You know what I'm saying? That's nuts.
And doing it in Cincinnati, I believe?
No, it was in Philadelphia against Cincinnati.
Against Cincinnati. Okay. I was going to say, if it was in Cincinnati. I mean, even Philly is a hitter's
ballpark.
But still,
that was a tough lineup at the time. You had Brandon Phillips. You had Joey Votto. I'm trying to think of the other guys. Sean Casey on that team.
It was a good team.
Scott Rowland
was on there.
Ludwig, I think, maybe.
I think Edgar Renteria was on that team, too.
Wow.
He was the shortstop.
Wow. A lot of former Cardinals there.
Yeah. Jackery loved to bring them to Cincinnati.
Yes, he did.
He almost got Pujols.
He did. Oh, my gosh. Talk about a future Hall of Famer right there.
Yeah.
But Halladay, 2-time Cy Young winner. So, I mean, you don't see a lot of those.
I don't even know. What was his win total?
203 wins, 105 losses, 338 career ERA in 416 games, 390 starts.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been a first ballot. Just because, I mean, people are going to take a hard look at those numbers, especially sports writers, and that's not going to go over well. At least the first time. I mean, yes, he'd get in sooner or later, but
the thing that might have done it would have been the no-hitter in the playoffs.
Yeah,
that might have got. I mean, he definitely would have gotten in. It might have taken 2 or 3 years, but that no-hitter in the playoffs might have gotten him a first ballot. It's hard to say, being that he was a Philly pitcher at the end of his career. You get those East Coast writers too. That makes a difference. But you know what? It's interesting. If Chris Carpenter hadn't missed those couple of years being hurt, how close their numbers would have been. They were basically the same pitcher. And one of the greatest baseball games you'll ever see was Roy Halladay and Chris Carpenter, Game 5 of the 2011 Division Series.
Yep, I was just about to say that's the game that, I mean, for everything that Halladay did, amazing games he pitched, the Cy Youngs he won, all of that, the one thing seared in my mind is that game. Those two guys went out there, best friends, fishing together in the off season, hanging out, all of that stuff. And those two guys went out there and just pitched, both of them, the games of their lives, it seemed like.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
The image that will always be in my mind is the end of that game after the last out, Carpenter and Albert hugging, and then Carpenter screaming as they ripped his jersey off of him. That's a memory anybody that watched that game will never forget.
Also, it was sad, but Ryan Howard tearing his Achilles, that was kind of memorable too, especially there, because
that was pretty much the end of that Phillies team's run, and that was a heck of a team.
It was a bright burning star that flamed out pretty quickly. Travis, George, we'll get to your question about Wainwright when we move on to the second half of this conversation. So we'll hang on to that. We will hang on to that question and come back to it. So, any other thoughts on Roy Halladay?
No, just an amazing pitcher. He really was, and it's a shame gone way too soon.
Mariano Rivera, probably one of the best, actually the best closer in baseball history. I mean, this guy was dominant, and he did it with one pitch, Scott. You realize how hard that is to do?
Well, I mean, he had more than one pitch.
I mean,
that
but
was
yeah,
the
but
pitch, yes.
he didn't use any other pitch. I mean, how many times did he throw a curve? Not often, if any.
No, I mean, he threw some, but no, yeah, he's known for that pitch, and he was dominant. His postseason dominance in itself were pretty amazing.
652 saves, most in of course Yankee franchise history, most in baseball history. So he was probably the most intimidating guy in my era, because once you heard "Enter Sandman," you knew the game was over.
Yeah, I mean, again, just amazing, dominant. That's like you said, that song when he walked in the door. That song kind of like Trevor Hoffman in San Diego when you heard Hell's Bells hit when he walked out of the field. I mean, you had to get goosebumps in the stands when you heard it. And, Mariano was the best to ever do it. I'm still surprised that he was the first unanimous Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Wags? What are your takeaways from Mariano?
Well, I mean, just looking at his resume, 13-time All-Star, 5-time World Series winner, World Series MVP, ALCS MVP, All-Star Game MVP, 5-time Royal Age relief, 652 saves, a 2.21 ERA, 42 saves in the postseason. I mean, I think for me, I count myself lucky that we got to see the two best closers in MLB history pitching at the same time, in Hoffman and Rivera. And the fact that they were in two separate leagues, I mean, that's incredible in and of itself. And they bred amazing closers as well. I mean, you remember Eric Gagne pitching for a couple of years in LA, and you can even throw a guy like an Isringhausen up there. Just they bred so many great closers from what they did.
Oh yeah.
Is for me, my lasting image is when Jeter and Pettit came out there to take the ball from him, and you just saw that emotion, and he just knew. And that was that for me. I mean, for everything that that Rivera did, that is still one of those moments that you're like, that's going to be what I remember him for, even with all the success that he had.
Yeah.
That's what, I mean, he was just amazing, an amazing player, amazing person, and lucky enough to have seen him pitch.
Right. Yep. And he was the leader of those Yankees teams for all those years, really, him and Jeter.
It's amazing. The guy had 1,173 strikeouts. And what did you think, Wags? He had more than one pitch, but he used that one pitch with, regularity, and he got hitters out with regularity.
It's one of those things. It's when you know what's coming and yet you still can't hit it.
Yep.
That's the thing that is just like, wow.
Right.
That's impressive. That is very impressive. I mean, it's just like, just like Hicks coming up there, and 107's coming, and yet you still can't hit it. But Mariano was just, he knew how to locate, and he could hit that spot every single time.
Yep.
Pinpoint.
He didn't have to throw hard. He had to throw accurate. And that's why he's in my mind, he's a lot like Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine and John Smoltz, the Braves trio, and just other guys of that era where it was about pinpoint control, and they could do it every time they wanted to.
Yep. Absolutely.
So that's what I look at. So, all right, now we're gonna move into who's next, and we're not gonna get to you yet.
Not me yet.
That's kind of one of the last things. I know you're gonna go on a huge rant on it. So let's talk about 2020 first, as far as who could get in. So you've got about, 5 first ballot guys that are going to be coming onto the books. You got Bobby Abreu, you got Jason Giambi, you got Cliff Lee, you got Paul Konerko, and you got the one sure thing in Derek Jeter.
And Jeter will probably be the second unanimous choice.
Both Yankees. Imagine that. I mean, you knew,
but they're guys that everybody sees.
Yeah, you knew with that dominant 3 or 4 World Series in a row that there were going to be a few first ballot
Bernie
unanimous.
Williams
I'm
choice.
shocked he wasn't, but anyway,
I'm not. I mean, it's not everybody. I'm along the lines of Scott, where I am shocked that Rivera was a unanimous choice, because if Cal Ripken and Ken Griffey Jr. weren't unanimous choices, what made Rivera a unanimous choice?
He was a Yankee,
and that's pretty much what it was.
And I mean, as good as Derek Jeter was, and he was good. But Jeter never put up amazing stats. He was just a solid ball player.
Clutch hitter, clutch fielder, but not ever dominant
No,
at his position or at the plate.
no. Because, really, for a good part of that time, he wasn't even the best shortstop in the American League. You had Nomar, you had A-Rod, you had Michael Young in Texas, who was a stud.
Yep.
And Jeter was the Yankee, which got him all of the headlines. And they won, and he was clutch in the postseason. Mr. November, as he got coined at one point.
Thank you, Michael K.
A Yankee announcer.
Yep.
But, again, being a Yankee and win a World Series is going to make him that unanimous choice. And everybody loved Derek Jeter. That smile, just the,
and there really wasn't ever any controversy that surrounded him either. I mean, you can say the same thing about Rivera. Never any controversy. He was a guy like a Roberto Clemente, who was always was a gamer, but he was also a human that went out and did what he needed to do.
Right.
Jeter, not so much as far as like the humanization part of it, but there really was never anything, controversial about Jeter. So that part of it as well. I guess we know Jeter's getting in. So do you see any of those other four guys even coming close to getting in, let alone staying on the ballot?
No.
Nope.
No. Maybe Paul Konerko, but other than that, no, because Bobby Abreu after that home run derby in Pittsburgh was nothing.
But he was never really anything before that home run derby either.
No, Abreu was just a solid ball player. He was never. And Konerko hit some home runs, but I don't think that he ever really put up great numbers.
Cliff Lee.
Cliff Lee's the guy that made, at the very least, stay on the ballot. That's the one guy that I think could stay on. He had very, very good pitcher for a couple of years there, put up some really good numbers. But yeah, I don't think any of those guys are even going to come close to sniffing Hall of Fame territory.
What are Cliff Lee's win and loss numbers, real quick?
Let me take a quick look.
Because he won a couple of Cy Youngs.
He did. That he did. Cliff Floyd. 143 wins, 91 losses. He only actually won one Cy Young.
Okay.
4-time All-Star. He did win the ERA title once. So, yeah, I mean.
He could stay on the ballot.
He could stay on the ballot, but, I mean, you look at his numbers, 14, 18, 14, a 22-year win season that he won the Cy Young, and then he went 7, 7, 12, 8, 4, 17, 6, 14, 4. So, I mean, he was never a consistent pitcher. And multiple wins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times over his career. So not super stellar. So a guy that could stay on the ballot, maybe. We'll see. A guy that is continuing to kind of climb up the ladders, Larry Walker.
I think next year's the year that he finally gets in. I think he did. I think the momentum finally started to build. He should have been in there a long time ago.
I agree. I loved Walker. I mean, I loved him even when he was in Colorado, but when he came here, even though he was getting toward the end of his career, he was still producing, Scott. That's something right there. I mean, the guy.
They don't go to the playoffs in 94 and 95 or 2004 and 2005 without Larry Walker.
Are you kidding me? Those Cardinal teams had 105 wins. They got Walker at the deadline of 2004.
But look what he did when they got him in 2004. In 2000, he was a huge part of those teams.
He was. He really, really was.
And he was the only person in that 2004 World Series that hit. He had 2 or 3 home runs in that World Series against the Red Sox. He was a huge part of those teams.
Yeah,
he was.
He'd be the first Colorado Rocky to go into the Hall of Fame.
Should Todd Helton go in?
No.
Okay.
I mean, he's a good player, solid player. He may be one of those guys that's a late entry, like what are they? Whatever Harold Baines got this year, the legacy group or whatever. He could be a guy that gets in after his time's up, possibly. I could see him getting in, but is he a guy? I don't even know if he's on the ballot anymore.
No, but
he may have fallen off the ballot. So that's one of those guys that could get in. A special exemption or something along those lines. Now, then we also move on. You talked about the steroid era. When you move into the trio of Bonds, Clemens, Schilling.
You already have Ivan Rodriguez in.
Continuing to build.
Pudge is in.
Yeah, Pudge is in.
No, my point is there was suspicion around him too.
But there wasn't any proof.
No,
there wasn't any
the greatest catcher in Major League history, essentially.
Was there any proof of Bonds?
Yes.
Yeah, the clear and the cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bonds, Clemens, Schilling continuously gaining momentum as the seasons go on, but their time is running out. Do you guys see any of those 3 guys ever getting in?
I don't think Kurt Schilling ever gets in.
I don't think so either. If anything,
I I think Clemens and Bonds both will eventually.
Yeah, and it'll be a sad day when they do. But it's
Why?
bound
Why
to
is it gonna be a
happen.
sad day?
Because guys who lied should never get in. Guys who lied about not doing something that was clearly wrong, and they end up getting caught with it, should never get in. I'm sorry. No.
So I guess
Yes, there are cheaters. There are.
Take out Gaylord Perry because he did never pitch with a spitball. That never happened.
He didn't do roids, Wags.
But he cheated.
He did cheat.
Spitball is just as against the rules. Steroids weren't against the rules when they
Nope.
were doing them.
They were doing everything within MLB's rule policy. Now, while it was illegal to actually take steroids in America, that doesn't mean that they were going against MLB rules. And if pitchers were doing it and hitters were doing it, everybody was on the same playing field.
And Roger Clemens, and I can't stand Barry Bonds, and I've met Barry Bonds on a few occasions. Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, both before they did steroids, were Hall of Famers.
Yep.
You could look at their numbers before there was any question, and those pre-steroids, they're Hall of Famers, both of them.
That's nuts. Pre-steroids, they were Hall of Famers, and then they decide to,
They get older and they start falling behind the pace that they set for themselves, and they're arrogant enough that they're like, we don't want this to happen to us. They see other guys starting to overtake them. Of course, they have that arrogance of them that we cannot be second fiddle.
then McGuire and Sosa should go in too.
No. McGuire, maybe.
McGuire could. Sosa,
Maybe.
There's no chance.
Sosa's not getting in.
Because not only did Sosa get caught doing steroids, he also
Torqued
got
bat.
torqued bat. Yeah, he was. And plus, he was a horrible human being. The Cubs won't even invite him back to
No.
regularly. The Cubs won't have anything to do with him. They pretend like he doesn't even exist.
They wanted to bring back Bartman, but they won't bring back Sosa.
Yeah, no.
So-
And McGuire's kind of made his amends with baseball.
Yeah.
As a coach, he admitted, and I'm gonna still say, and I know steroids do something. I think Mark McGuire hits every one of those home runs, whether he's doing steroids or not. Maybe he doesn't hit 560-foot home runs, but when the guy hit 49 home runs when he was a beanpole as a rookie, there's no doubt in my mind that he still.
They
hits
say
it.
he was doing it in Oakland too. Now I don't know
but
if he was doing it.
not his rookie year. I
No,
don't think.
no. That's
So
not-
and the argument I always made for it was, steroids is going to help you hit things farther.
Right.
They're not going to actually make you hit them.
No.
You still have to have hand-eye coordination.
Right.
You still have to have speed and skill. So yes, steroids were cheating, but they didn't cheat to help you become a better ball player. They help you become a ball player that could do extraordinary things.
Right. And there's some guys like Brady Anderson in Baltimore who all of a sudden 1 year hits 50 home. I mean, steroids definitely did that for him because he went from like a 9 home run a season guy to 50. McGuire, when you look at McGuire's numbers, he was always that guy. And his thing was that he did steroids not to help him hit the ball farther. He did it to try to get back on the field faster after he got hurt.
And I'm sure that in that time frame up until the home run race, that was what the reasoning behind using steroids was to get back out there, to make the money, to continue playing, all that stuff. And then once the home run derby essentially went down between Sosa and McGuire, it turned from getting back on the field to being a better, being a star player essentially. And that's why Bonds started doing it, and Clemens, I'm sure, started doing it as well, other players. So, all right. So now we're going to get into Joe's topic. We're not going to start with who wants to talk about. I got to answer the question from Travis George first.
No, I agree.
I got to answer his first. Is Adam Wainwright a Hall of Famer?
No, and he would be if he wasn't hurt a couple of those years he was. I feel like because he was that bulldog. I mean, still is. I mean, he has outings where it looks like vintage Waino now. The point was when he was at his best, no one could touch him. Nobody. I mean, this guy, I'm not. You know how I compared him to Chris Carpenter in terms of crust, in terms of, it may not look that way when it came to, on the mound aggressiveness, but when it came to battling, this guy and Chris Carpenter were at the top. And I believe both those guys, if they don't get hurt, are Hall of Famers. I really do think so. Now, he might think something different. You might think something different, but that's just me.
I don't think Wainwright gets in. I mean, if he doesn't get hurt those couple of years, maybe. And I mean, he had really good numbers for a while, but he never won a Cy Young. He was in the running through. Well, him and Carpenter both were in the top 3 for 2 or 3 years in a row there. Carpenter did win one, But no, Wainwright didn't win enough games. Too many years being hurt, too many years where he had to pitch out of the bullpen. Definitely a top-notch pitcher, but I don't think he's quite Hall of Fame level.
Yeah, 154 wins, 92 losses in his career. Yeah, like you said, he's one of those guys. He was consistent: 14, 11, 19, 20, 14, 19, 20, 13, 12. But he's also had seasons where 2-4, 2-1. Those are the years he gets hurt. 6-7 this year. In the postseason, he had 4 saves. That's the crazy thing. He had the one in 2006 when he was the closer, and 4 saves and helped them win a World Series. But once again, never one of those guys that led anything. 3-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove winner, Silver Slugger winner, 2006 World Series champion. So he's all of those things. But once again, he's one of those guys that will probably stay on the ballot for a couple of years, but will probably never approach the number to get in.
And the thing, and him and Carpenter were close. Carpenter again would have had more wins. He basically missed 3 years. The difference was Carpenter's postseason record, kind of like Mariano Rivera. Carpenter was 10-1 in the postseason. Yep. That would have gone a long way. Plus, he won a Cy Young. Plus, he was a top 3 finalist a couple of other times. Yep. There was a difference in the two of them.
Yep. All right, Joe. You got 4 minutes to let loose.
All right. Can you go to Ted Simmons for me, please? Because this is baffling to me how this guy is not in the Hall of Fame. All right. This guy had over 8,600 at-bats with 2,472 hits. He had 248 home runs, 100 home runs, over 100 home runs from each side of the plate as a catcher. Okay, and with over 1,300 RBIs. And yet Gary Carter gets in before Ted Simmons. That makes no sense to me. Gary Carter's career average was 262. Had more home runs than Simmons, but less RBIs. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, I feel like Simmons has been getting snubbed for years. It's pissed off a lot of Cardinal fans, not just Cardinal fans, because he wasn't just a Cardinal. He was actually on that 82 Brewers team. So if you look at Gary Carter's average, you look at Ted Simmons' career numbers, do you see where I'm kind of getting at here?
Oh yeah, but Gary Carter hit 324 home runs. And at the time, 300 home runs was a marker.
And a big part of that is going to be that Gary Carter played in New York with the Mets. Yep. He won a World Series with the Mets. Simmons played on. I agree with you. Ted Simmons should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago, but Ted Simmons played on really bad Cardinal teams that never made a postseason. They hold that against him.
Never got that exposure to the national media.
And he wasn't – he was a great offensive player, wasn't as good defensively. I agree with you 100%. Ted Simmons should be in the Hall of Fame, and he missed getting in last year by a vote. I think he still will get in. I think at some point. Hopefully that happens before it's too late. I hope he's still – not that he's that old, but he's had cancer and a couple of other problems over the years. Plus he was the general manager of the Pirates in the 90s, the Van Slyke, Bonds, Bonilla years. He was the general manager of those Pirates teams. So he put together some really good teams in that aspect of his baseball life. But yeah, he should be in there. It's a shame that he's not.
Yeah, I'm not debating the fact that he should be in. I think he should be in as well. I'm just kind of looking at the mindset of the writers and who votes on these things. Carter hit a benchmark of 300 home runs, and for a catcher to have over 300 home runs, it's pretty impressive. You look at the market that he plays in. You look at the fact that he had postseason success and was a World Series champion. All-Star games, multiple awards, those sorts of things. You look at Simmons; he's an 8-time All-Star and won a Silver Slugger. That's the only 2 things on his resume that are on there. And, not a World Series player, not a playoff player, not somebody that got, the national media spotlight shined on him. A good, solid player who put up good numbers, better batting average, yes, less home runs, almost 100 less home runs. Yes, he hit home runs 100 plus from each side of the plate. That's impressive as well. But looking at it from the voters' perspective, you're going to pick a Gary Carter over a Ted Simmons, whether Ted Simmons deserves to be in the Hall of Fame or not, which I think he does, and like Scott says, I agree he'll probably get in. It's just hopefully before it's too late.
Another thing that really hurt Ted Simmons is the time that he played. One of the greatest catchers in baseball history was playing in Cincinnati. Johnny Bench, he didn't get the publicity that he should have. Probably would have been more of an all-star and won more awards, except Johnny Bench was playing in Cincinnati. And some of Simmons' numbers are better than Bench's.
Yeah.
But Bench won, 4 World Series, and
Ted didn't win any.
Yeah, Johnny, part of the Big Red Machine against, again, a Cardinals team all those years that didn't win anything.
I'm not making comparisons here, but did Ripken win a World Series?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. I was trying to make a point there, but kind of ruined it.
Cal Ripken also has set the record for most games played in a row. Too.
No, but
So,
I think he has the most.
But the thing is, though, the fact that Ron Santo didn't even get in until last year after he died.
Right.
So
He wasn't
it's
even.
going to take Ted Simmons dying for him to get in.
Ron Santo was good, but I don't know that Ron Santo was necessarily a Hall. I mean, he was a fringe Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. What do you think?
All right. Same here. So, all right. You ready for this?
Yes.
We're headed into overtime.
Joe's like, what is going on?
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Max, for that one.
So we are in overtime, and overtime is going to be one of those spots that if we got some time left over, we'll move into it and talk some topics that are not necessarily right on the cusp of happening, but are pretty close. Today we're going to be talking about some SEC football, college football, and NFL football. I mean, it's about that time. SEC Media Week was this week, so we have that going on. Mizzou Tigers were picked to finish third in the SEC East. They were not really picked to do much as far as, in the SEC.
Although, you know what?
But they could.
Yeah, there were some SEC guys that think that Mizzou's going to be the surprise team of that. Yeah. Because nobody really knows what Florida is going to be. Florida won a bunch of games last year, but they weren't really that good. And Mizzou beat them bad in Florida last year. So, I mean, I still look at that schedule and can see Mizzou losing one game.
Alabama?
Georgia.
Yeah,
they don't play Bama this
That's
year.
right. Georgia. And Georgia's picked to face Alabama in the SEC title game. So,
and you never know. I mean, Mizzou's gone to Georgia and beat them before. They did it the year that they won. The first year they won the SEC, so they beat Georgia in Georgia. So, I mean,
and is the game at home this year, or is it in Georgia?
It's in Georgia.
It is in Georgia this year. Okay.
But yeah, I've seen some people that think Mizzou's going to be a playoff team.
Very well could be. I mean, you got Kelly Bryant at quarterback. Now the big question comes down to: are they going to be able to compete in postseason play?
I think this team can't. I mean, you got 6 starters coming back on defense, 8 starters coming back on offense.
I'm not even talking about on the field. I'm talking about off the field.
Oh, because of the
sanctions. I mean, I know they got to go through the appeal process, but will the appeal process happen before or after the season? And if it happens before the season, what do you think the result could be on that?
I think it's going to get overturned.
I hope it does.
I think there's so many people, Paul Peinbaum, a bunch of other big name people are coming out saying, this is the most ridiculous thing they've ever seen. I think there's going to, and the fact that Missouri looks like they're going to be good.
And not to mention Kelly Bryant, one of the best quarterbacks in the nation right now, is at Mizzou. Why would you deprive him more? I think deprive him and the team of a big time opportunity when you have it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they don't care.
Let me play conspiracy theorist here for you.
Of course, you're
Ready?
the conspiracy theorist on this show. So
okay. So let's say we get near the end of the season, and it's looking like that you're not going to see Alabama and Georgia in the SEC title game. Mizzou's trending to be the team that comes out of the East instead of Georgia. Does that appeal get hurt all of a sudden?
Oh, if it hasn't, it will. That's the thing. If you go to that, you run into that Georgia game, and Mizzou's 7-0. The national media is going to be talking about it so much that it'll put so much pressure on the NCAA. They're almost going to have to overturn it.
Or if they're not seeing, do you think an Alabama-Georgia game would get more ratings and more money brought in than an Alabama-Mizzou game?
Yeah.
So do you think that if Alabama and Mizzou are trending to meet in that SEC title game and Georgia's sitting there just on the outside, do you think the NCAA goes, look, we heard the appeal, we're sticking by our guns, Mizzou's ineligible for postseason play?
I don't. I think there'd be so much backlash if they did that at that point. I really do. Because if if Mizzou's that good and they get to that Alabama game in the SEC championship game, you are gonna make a ton of money because there'll be a whole lot of people from Mizzou travel to wherever that game's played.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, and like I said, the national backlash would be so big from the media that I think one way or another it gets overturned if Mizzou has a decent year.
I'm hoping so. I mean, I hope you're right. I just, from everything I see out of the NCAA, it scares me that could be the possibility that happens. Is Mizzou's trending to that SEC championship game? They're looking good. They beat Georgia. They're going in there, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we're going to hear this appeal. Hey, we made our decision. It's upheld. I mean, that's just for me. I mean, I guess that's maybe the inner Blues fan in me. that like everything seems to, like, whenever some things could be going just right, something swoops in. And it's also being a Mizzou fan, because I mean, the times that they were number one in the nation and then lose to Oklahoma and things like that, where they have that chance to really solidify the Mizzou name and then they falter. It just seems to me like that's something that could happen, where they could be right on that cusp of being like, look, we're going to come out of the SEC, we're going to play in the national championship game, and then boom, the appeal is heard. They're denied postseason play. Everything they did is for naught. And hey, that's life as a Mizzou fan.
I can still remember being in Columbia for the Mizzou-Nebraska game at the end of the 90s, the kick, catch, touchdown. We were getting ready to go into the locker room because we knew some of the players. And that, so excited because Nebraska was number one, going to knock them off. And that ball gets kicked up in the air. And I can still, that still breaks my heart every time I think about it. 5 downs. I mean, just so many of them. So many things. So, yeah. So we'll see. I mean, college football will be picking up here relatively soon. NFL training camps are opening this week. By the end of the week, all 32 teams will have players in camp. We're going to be getting our fantasy football leagues started back up again, so we'll have more information coming up soon on that. We're also talking about possibly doing some weekly pick'em contests, whether that's NFL or college football. We're not totally decided yet, so kind of let us know on our Facebook page if you'd like to see any of those pop out and be a part of those as well. We want to hear from the fans. We want to know what you guys think and what you guys would want to be involved with. Real quick, what do you think of Tyreek Hill not getting suspended at all?
Oh man,
he had to have had some really good evidence that he didn't do it.
Yeah, and the NFL is going to come out and be like, well, the police department didn't give us any of the stuff that they had, and blah 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 blah. But you know what? That's just the same old from the NFL. I think more happened than you think, but the NFL didn't want to research it and they didn't want to go out there. I mean, Tyreek may have had some really, really good evidence. He had to have, like you said, to avoid suspension. I think it's one of those things that I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way. If something comes out against him or something comes out and he'd be like, look, this is exactly what happened. And I would probably believe it either way.
I mean, you almost have to think that he really didn't do it. I mean, the police had opened 2 different investigations and didn't find any proof. And apparently his meeting with the commissioner the other day, he had 2 lawyers and they spent 5 hours. And from what I've heard, he had really compelling evidence that he didn't do it.
And from what I've heard, it almost seems like the ex-fiance may have even been setting him up.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it looks like, probably.
So, and obviously you don't want to speculate, especially with the fact that it involved a child and all those things as well. So I think with what the NFL had on hand and what they had gathered, they couldn't suspend him. But once again, I go back and with everything that's happened in other instances, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way. If something ends up coming to light, showing it in the negative, or if it comes out showing it in the positive, I would believe it either way. And unfortunately, that's a really sad thing to even have to consider.
Right. What a huge difference it makes for the Chiefs, though.
Yeah, it does. Gives them that threat that they would have lost.
Yeah, I mean, it makes them probably the favorite. If not the favorite right there, because I guess New England still has to be the favorite just because they are And did you see the video of Brady working out with Gronk?
No, I didn't see that. I saw the video of him jumping off a cliff with a 6-year-old daughter, though.
Yeah, him and Gronk are working out, so who knows? Maybe Gronk comes back.
Mid-season?
Yep.
That's very, 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 very likely. I mean, it's the Patriots. I hate them.
I know.
I hate them.
I'm so tired of seeing the same team over and over and
Chicago's
over
going to be
again.
pretty good, too.
They're going to be real good. And the Rams are going to take a step back.
No.
I hope.
What about my Packers?
Yeah, they're
not going to be good.
No.
Sorry, Joe.
I thought Rodgers would have one more in him. One more.
Well, he might have a great season, but the rest of the team sucks.
Yeah, who else is on that team?
That's a very good point. So we'll see how Rodgers fares, in a
Very competitive.
yeah, yep.
Because the
The
Vikings,
Lions could get better too.
the Vikings are going to be good.
Yep.
Well,
So
great show, Drew.
yeah,
Great show.
it was. It was.
show.
Thank you guys for this great show. It's been fun. As always, for Wags, for Scott, I'm Joe. We will see you guys next week.